and invested in what you know. So my concern is that I'm going to be teaching you things and you're going to say, I know, and I'm going to get frustrated. So if that happens too often, then I will bail.
Okay.
Just because I can't teach somebody who doesn't have any room to learn anything. Even if you feel like what I'm teaching you is something you already know, that's good. That you already know it. It's good. I don't necessarily believe that what you think you know is what I'm trying to teach you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But you will certainly believe that what you think you know is absolutely what you know. And that's totally true and valid. Okay? So, that being said, we shall go forward. The next thing I need to explain is that I make broad, gross generalizations about deaf people and language.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I do this without pissing anybody off is to define two non-entities. One of them is called a pseudo-deaf person, and the other one is called a pseudo-interpreter. My dog can hear your dog barking.
I'm going to close my door. I can hear you.
Oh, anyway, so the pseudo-deaf person is a deaf person who exists in a world where there is no hearing person telling them that English is a better language.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a deaf person who is born deaf. They are born with hearing, with deaf parents. The deaf parents have language. The language is a deaf language, not a pseudo-hearing language,
Mm-hmm.
right? So one of the things that I don't believe is I don't believe that finger spelling has anything, and it has anything to do with ASL. None. Right? Finger spelling is phonetic, visual representations of sounds that we produce into English words. And deaf people would never create that. If they would have created text.
Mm-hmm.
They would have their own writing system, and they would have had it. And instead, what they have is we finger spell to deaf people words we don't know the sign for, and we assume that somehow they're just going to know what those words are. We finger spell, words that we don't know the sign for, and somehow they're just, I don't know, deaf people on one hand can only read at the 3rd or 4th grade level, and on the other hand, if I finger spell serendipity, they're going to know what I'm talking about. Scientific words, medical terms, when we go to doctor's offices, everybody's out here finger spelling to deaf people. It's like, there are deaf people out there with PhD, totally, absolutely, but there are also deaf people out there with a PhD who can't read.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that because I work with them. Some of them can read, many of them can read very well, but they're not as fluent as a hearing person in this language. So when I talk about deaf people in general, I'm talking about the pseudo-deaf person who doesn't exist. There is no deaf person out there in this country. It would never be allowed to just let people raise their children with sign language without any English interference. That would never be allowed. We have to bring them and put them in school and put hearing aids on them and teach them what sound is and try to teach them English and stuff English and stuff English and stuff English. So every deaf person we meet as an adult has got idiosyncratic language. Nobody has one language across the group. Everybody has whatever language they got from whatever input they got, right? So when I'm talking about interpreting to the deaf person, and my assumption is the deaf person doesn't have information, it's, if you're ever confused, just think, okay, well, we're talking about a pseudo-deaf person. I think that there are a lot of deaf people out there that walk around without a lot of information that most hearing people assume they have. Mm-hmm. We assume it because they're sitting at the dinner table. We assume it because they wear hearing aids. We assume it because they have gone to a public school. They have gone to a private school. They have gone to a deaf school. They have been taught by hearing people. They have been taught by deaf people. They have been taught by fluent signers. They're not getting any of the external vicarious stuff.
No.
So they don't carry around a lot of the basic stuff that we have just because we happen to be alive in a space with other human beings. They just don't get all of that stuff. So that's the pseudo-deaf person. The pseudo-interpreter is the interpreter who sits in the back of the room when you go in and you sit down and you decide to interpret and hollers out the answers that you seem to not be getting fast enough. The pseudo-interpreter is the interpreter who is judging your interpretation before you ever put your hands in the air. The pseudo-interpreter is the interpreter who is watching you to find your mistakes. You know, oh, they made a mistake. That's not what they said. That's not what it was. Somebody needs to do something about this interpreter. These deaf people are not getting the information, right? That's a pseudo-interpreter. That person is not there. They're not doing the job. They're there for whatever their reasons, but they didn't say, here, let me interpret this, right? So when we're interpreting, when we're signing, when we're working with other people, we have to be careful about the pseudo-interpreter because pseudo-interpreter is going to make trouble for us.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to. It's something inside of their soul. They're not an interpreter, but they have to fix the fucking interpreter. They have to make sure it's right according to their definition of right. Very, very difficult to work with. Okay? And generally what I do is I get up and I hand them the microphone. You can obviously do this better than me, so I don't know why you're not in this chair. And since you're going to make sure everybody can hear you anyway, would you like to have the microphone? I've not had anybody take me up on it, ever, you know? But it's very, very damaging to interpreters who already don't feel real confident about the work that they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when we sign, when we're talking about what we're interpreting, we're going to ask two measures on the puzzle, okay? Would this puzzle be understood? What would be understood by the pseudo-deaf person? What would be understood by the deaf person that doesn't have any English? Is what they understand what we understand in English? And secondly, what would the pseudo-interpreter understand? And what would they think we did wrong? What do we have to do to calm their ruffled feathers so we can move on in our job? Because we do have to interpret for that person to keep them off our goddamn back while we're doing our job. And if you're not sure, I will guarantee you there's a shit ton of them out there. Mm-hmm. Pretty much every job that I go to that has a hearing person who knows sign in that job, mm-hmm. that is going to be a pseudo-interpreter. They know the deaf person, they know all. I went to a job at the school for the deaf, and I'm not an interpreter at the school for the deaf. They have an entire population of deaf children from all over the world with all kinds of names fingerspelled. I don't know who these kids are. And every teacher in that audience does. They know them intimately. They know their sign names. I've never seen their sign names. They know how their names are spelled. I don't know how their names are spelled. So you go in and you're interpreting in that situation and you can bet your ass. Everybody is going to be making sure that this working interpreter gets it right, which means they're going to be doing the job. Makes me fucking crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell? Okay, so those are two things. Broad general definition of deaf people, pseudo-deaf, and broad general interpretation of hearing people who know how to sign, who think that they're as good as interpreters, but really sometimes they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Okay, and if they do, they need to get up, come down, and take the microphone and just do the damn job. If they can do it better than the interpreter, then they should be doing the interpretation. They're the only person qualified for this job, so they need to be doing the job, right? Okay, the second thing I wanted to say is we need to talk about, well, so there's no finger spelling. We're not going to do any finger spelling, okay? Finger spelling is out. I don't care if it's a three-letter word. I don't care if everybody on God's green arrow finger spells it. I don't care if it's the word for bus, or the word for car, or the word for zoo, or the word for, you know, whatever we happen to, bank is a finger sign, dog is a finger sign, dog is a finger sign. Oh my God, I should be able to finger spell dog. Snapping is actually finger spelling. You know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, not the point, don't care. Concept is deaf person would never have come up with finger spelling on their own. So if it's finger spelled, it's probably English. And if it's English, we're trying to remove ourselves from English influence if we possibly can. Okay? Next piece. A long time ago, somebody, deaf by the way, got it into their idea that they could teach deaf children English by signing signs and initializing every sign so that the deaf child would know, by osmosis I expect, the word that was intended. The people who work with deaf children, for the most part, believe that these kids can hear. On some level, they can hear, and they're getting English. They're just using sign language as a crutch to be able to communicate that English or to be able to understand that English. So when you walk into it, you come up with a system like C-sign, and you say, okay, well, this is attitude, and this is character, and this is temperament, and it's, these are all the words, and if we use them, the deaf kid is just gonna know what those words mean. We can teach these deaf kids English by using it, just like we do with hearing children.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then they say this fatal thing. ASL doesn't have a verb of be. So let's give it a verb of be. So the ASL verb of be is am, are, is, was, were. Notice it's past tense. We have past tense there, okay? And then people said, no, wait. ASL doesn't have a verb of be. All that am, are, is, was, that doesn't even make any sense. So get rid of it. So when you're signing for yourself, when you're signing to interpret, when you're signing period, you have been taught over the last 25 years to ignore words. Ignore am, are, is, was, were, be. Just ignore them. Don't include them. You don't have to worry about them. ASL doesn't have them, right? You can ignore the. You can ignore a. So most of the time you can ignore of. All of our little conjunctive words, we can just throw them away. They don't exist in ASL. The problem is they do exist in ASL. And if we just sign an English word order and remove all of our little connector words and all of our specifiers, like the difference between the boy and a boy, those are huge differences in English. And because we don't sign the, and because we don't sign a, the deaf don't have the boy, and they don't have a boy. All they have is boy. So the language has those specifiers. It doesn't do it the way English does it, because it's not English. Big surprise, right? But it most definitely has those specifiers, okay? So we need to start listening for them, and we need to put them in, and we need to understand what we're doing. So that'll be something that we will be working on, is putting back a dog versus the dog, putting it back, this is a cup. Okay, this is a cup, is it? It's a really important thing that is a part of all languages. I don't know that there could be a language where you would have the inability to state the state of being of something, right? So, okay. So there's that. We're going to put those words, those ideas back into our language so that we start making sense again. Because when you just eliminate those words and you sign an English word order, you make no sense at all. Okay? Then the word order of ASL is not subject, verb, object, ever. And there's a lot of people out there who say, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Who say ASL can have a subject, verb, object sentence structure. It's okay. You can do that sometimes. Deaf people understand it just fine. And I'm saying, no, you cannot. Because of the kind of language ASL is, you must have your verb last. It must be last, period. If you have your verb anywhere but last, you're basically going to break your sentence. And you'll see what I'm talking about as we start working with sentences. Okay, you're going to break your sentences, you're going to break your meaning, okay, you're going to eliminate directionality, and you're going to have a problem associating your verb. Your verb is always going to be last, your subject is always going to be next to your verb, your object is always going to come first, and there are things that come even before the object. So this is a verb last language, it's object, subject, verb, and you will understand why when we start working on it. You'll be able to see very clearly why. Okay. Now, in academia, they talk about it's a topic, object, subject, verb, language, right? So the topic tells us what we're talking about before we actually start talking about it. But that topic is going to be reiterated as the subject next to the verb when we get into the sentence. Okay? In the very beginning, we won't be dealing with any topic sentences. Rhetoricals don't live in ASL. There are sentences that need a rhetorical in ASL. One every 5,000. So you can interpret for 20 years and use a required rhetorical once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
The my name is what is not a rhetorical. It's a poor representation of signing. It's not a rhetorical. What they tried to do is they tried to figure out how to teach rhetoricals, and they said the key behind rhetoricals is that I'm going to answer the question I'm asking, and you don't know the question I'm asking. You're freezing. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you don't know the question I'm asking. But there's a little bit more to it. Structurally, let me see if I can. Structurally, there are things that need to happen in order for it to be required to be a rhetorical. And it's not ever used for something like my name, where I know I have to give you my name anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to construct a rhetorical. That's just idiocy. Okay.
Just so you know, they never taught us grammar in school.
I know.
So my understanding of grammar is from Spanish and still not strong.
Yeah, they still don't. In interpreter programs, they still don't. And I think my opinion is the reason they don't teach ASL grammar is because they don't know ASL grammar. The people who say they're going to teach grammar don't know what they're talking about. And so they have to do something, and we end up with weird shit like rhetoricals for my name is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, rhetoricals for introductions. That's just stupidly wrong. And it's interesting to me because you can see deaf people start to do it, and you can see it on their body going, this is like totally weird. But they told me I have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So, all right. Now we're going to talk about big world and small world. And we're going to talk about nouns and verbs a little bit, but mostly nouns, okay? And what kind of language this is. I do not believe that ASL has vocabulary. ASL is a constructed language. There's some vocabulary, but for the most part, it's constructed. The reason it's constructed is because it's three-dimensional. So if I'm talking about an airplane and I'm an accomplished signer, fluent, I'm not going to sign this for airplane until I know which direction I am in relation to the airplane, right? So when you see people saying this is a sign for airplane, first off, programs now are teaching interpreters that this is the sign for airplane. It's not the sign for airplane. It's the sign for object that flies.
Mm-hmm.
We've had this sign, flying birds, many, many years. And I've had interpreters correct me and say, oh, no, you can't use that for a bird. That's only an airplane. And I'm like, we haven't had airplanes but for 150 years. You're telling me that deaf people never use this to fly birds? It doesn't make any sense. Damn. Okay. So one of the things that is true for vocabulary, the fastest, quickest way to recognize vocabulary is that if you point to it, you said it. Okay? So there are people who say that ASL doesn't actually mime, and that pointing and gesturing is gesture, it's not language. I don't believe that. I believe anything you do that creates a word that shows up in your mind, an English word that shows up in your mind if you're hearing, or a comprehension in your mind, that is language. Okay? So somebody from linguistics can argue with me about it, and that's fine. I won't budge on this one. If you point to it, you've named it. Okay, so we don't need to fingerspell chair. You can just find a chair and point to it. Book and point to it, or wall and point to it. Everything is just pointing to it, and that's naming it. Okay. Now, there are two primary worlds in ASL. It's okay. It's okay. It's on here. She has a little dog. It's okay. It's all good.
What kind of dog's that?
Mine?
Yeah.
Hi. Hi.
Hello.
He's an old English bulldog. Huh?
How old is he?
He's 4.
He's pretty.
There you go. Woo, that was good. Okay. Okay. So ASL is broken into 2 different worlds. Okay. The first world we're going to talk about is Big World. In Big World, everything is proportionate to you. Okay. So what's the sign for telephone?
This is a trick question.
No, it's
Telephone?
not. That's the sign for telephone. And is that in Big World or Small World?
Probably Big World.
Big World. It is in proportion to you. It fits your body. Okay. So
Do you mind if I sit on a different chair?
Not at all. You can sit on wherever you want to sit.
Okay, because this is hurting I'm listening. Let me move my chair.
Yeah, be comfortable. So the Big World sign.
There we go. That's better. Can you see me? Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so the Big World sign for door. No, the Big World sign for car. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Big World sign for window.
I learned it as window, but.
Okay. Do you think that's the Big World sign?
Well.
You don't know what Small World is, but yes, you can do this for Big World. You can also do this for Big World, even though that's technically a sign. It's not. That's an interesting piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
The window's interesting, but it's not Small World. You're right. Spaghetti. Spaghetti comes up.
Does it?
It does.
Huh, okay.
So you're actually like salad.
Like salad.
You're spaghetti.
Mm-hmm.
This is spring. So if you only do one, you don't get a noodle. And if you do this, you get food.
Yeah.
Okay. Big World. All right. Small World. Okay. Big World is used to express your ideas in a way that activates mirror neurons. Do you know what mirror neurons are?
Mm-hmm. Somewhat.
So you've probably heard about them.
Yeah,
I don't know if anybody's actually. I know that I heard that somebody is starting to do English research, is spoken English or spoken language research on the effect of mirror neurons. But when they discovered mirror neurons, they couldn't figure out what they could do, but they call them the empathy gene.
Mm-hmm.
That basically, if you see someone stab someone, you feel that pain, just as if you experienced it. Your brain actually, they've done MRIs with people and they show them signs of, videos of people hurting each other. And the pain centers in your brain actually activate. So we actually physically and psychically experience the things that we see when we're like watching video games and when we're watching TV and we're seeing people get shot. Right? Our brain is actually replicating that experience for us. So I believe, and this I don't have any proof of because mirror neurons are pretty new, but I believe that ASL uses, well, and I believe that I use mirror neurons when I'm working, right? We can activate mirror neurons in our language because it's visual and it's three-dimensional, and we can excite the the sensory experience of the listener if we do it right. When we're in big world, that's when we start exciting their sensory neurosensory experience. Small world not. Okay? In other words, if you're rowing a boat like this, your brain is firing.
Yeah.
Stress and the tension of the row.
Mm-hmm.
If you're rowing a boat like this, your brain is not.
No, you're too far of a distance.
Right? You're just not experiencing it. It's not a physical action. So when we sign our verbs, we really kind of want to be in big world if we can. Okay? And so we'll talk about and we will exercise moving in and out of big world. Okay? Small world, on the other hand, is the world that we are in when we are moving through space. Its whole purpose is to be able to let us move from one place to the other. If you said, hang on, I want to get that chair, right? And you were stuck with your butt in your current chair to go and get it, you couldn't say, I want to get that chair. You could point to it because we've got the ability to point to the name. But what happens if it's in another room? Right? You have no way to tell me that I'm going to another room. I have no way to get to another room in my sign language space to show that I'm getting the chair, I'm going to bring it back. Okay? So small world lets you build maps. Small world is in proportion to this person. This is a person in classifier in ASL. Small world is always in proportion to this person. So that'll help you know if you're in big world or if you're in small world. One example of the proportion is the sign for house. Mm-hmm. Okay. So house is proportional. Notice that house is 2-story. It always has an attic and it always has a basement. Mm-hmm. Okay. The house, all houses are not 2-story houses, mm-hmm. right? So when you build house and you put your person up and you got your perspective, or you build house and you point to it and you got your house, okay? We don't know if that's a 2-story house or a single-story house when it's first constructed. So we are going to assume it's a 1-story until we see stairs. And then we're going to populate the other half of the house. But the house itself, the sign for house, contains the potential to be 1, 2, 3-story if it's a condo, right? It contains the potential for all of that. It just doesn't become real in our signing mm-hmm. until we start talking about it. So I don't have a basement in my house. House, they're mine. Does that house have a basement?
You're asking me a question?
Yep.
Oh yeah, no, it doesn't.
It does. My house doesn't have a basement, but that house can have a basement.
Well, sure.
Right. The sign itself it holds the potential for a basement.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I build the house, mine there, and I don't talk about basementness, then we don't get basement. And if a deaf person wants to specify, they will ask, does it have a basement?
Schrodinger's cat.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. The other thing is, where is your floor in small world? So put your hand up like you're going to walk your person. Okay, your elbow is on your thing. So is that where you would sign if you were sitting up and you were not on your...
No, like here.
It's a little bit down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
That is your floor.
Yeah.
That's in proportion. This right here is your floor. You're going to walk on your floor. Your road is going to be on your floor. Your car is going to drive on your floor. There's your floor. We always have a floor that's proportionate to our body, the length of our arms, this and that and the other thing, right? And you can find your floor if you hold your hand up.
Hmm.
Where's the sky?
Probably like up here.
So the sky is measured off the top of your head.
Yeah.
So it's here's the floor because that's where he lives. The sky is here, which replicates to here because his head is my head.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
So everything in my world is proportionate to me. Everything in his world is proportionate to him.
Mm-hmm.
So when we hit the sky, we're going to assign sky way up here because it's measured against my head. But when we come here, it's going to be about right here.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Okay, so sign chair.
Chair.
Small world or big world?
Small.
Okay. Sign mountain.
Mountain.
Small world or big world?
Small.
Good. Sign rock.
A rock.
Small world or big world?
It's still small.
Not.
Think so?
Guaranteed. Is that rock? This is a rock. The sign for rock comes from having a rock and finding out that it's hard.
Okay.
Okay? So rock is not small on two counts. One, it's not small because its original size is big enough to actually be a rock. And two, it's not small because I'm using my hand to show its hardness.
Okay.
Therefore, it's in proportion to me. Big word.
Okay.
Okay? Boat.
Boat.
Small world or big
Small.
world? Is there a way to make a big world boat?
Sure.
How?
Boat.
So that would be really hard to follow.
Probably.
Okay? So if it's really hard to follow, it would not be used very often.
Mm-mm.
Okay? I would make a big world boat by rowing.
Okay.
So that the action shows that I'm in a big world activity.
Okay.
Right? That does give me a rowboat. It doesn't give me a cruise boat. Right? Mm-hmm. So when we're going to talk about something like a big world boat, like a cruise ship, we're going to build the cruise ship in small world. And then we're going to put ourselves on the ship so we can interact with parts of it to show that we're in a big world space. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You're looking at it from a distance, and then you're coming into it.
Yes. So the other thing that small world does is it lets you pass distance. So we know that if I'm here, I can go there. So if New York City is here, then California is there, I can go. So I can shrink the world into a small wall map, and I can go, and I can put the map on the ground, and I can go, or go. Okay? Mm-hmm. So the whole thing about small world is to allow me to get from one place to another, and to allow me to build the places that I'm going to be messing around in. Okay? Mm-hmm. And then once I have the places I'm going to be messing around in, I'm going to pop out into big world, and I'm going to do the thing that I'm talking about. I found a small world verb. Oh, here's a good small world verb. Sign skydive.
I don't know.
All right, so you're off the screen. I can't see you.
Oh.
Can you turn it? Can you turn your computer so it's to the right?
Yep. I said, if you have the air.
Very nice. Okay, that's good. Now you don't have to mark air. We know that there's air up there. If you have an airplane going like this is the classifier for a flying object. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if we have that and we have him jump, or you can have him jump, right?
Mhm.
Either one will work. This says I can see the little body. This says my feet are down.
Mhm.
So it depends on how much detail you want to put into the experience of the jumper. Okay. All right. Sign stove. Okay. So what do you think about what you just did tells me that those get hot?
Nothing. It's just a shape.
Okay. So as a shape, could that be a drum?
It could be anything that's shaped like that.
Well, then it's not a stove.
No, I don't know the sign for stove.
I know. I did that on purpose.
Yeah.
So let's. Okay. Okay. So we're getting closer. Good. So one of the things that happens with ASL, really, is we have to be able to construct the vocabulary we need. We have different ways that we construct. We can construct by purpose, how it's used, which is what we do with airplane, right? Things that fly. We can construct by what it looks like,
Mm-hmm.
which most people who build stoves, they want to build stoves like this, right? But that's not what my stove looks like. So that would fail for a lot of people. It would fail for a restaurant chef
Mm-hmm.
because their stove looks like that. But wait, that's the sign for floor,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's see if we can figure out what are the components of a stove. Okay. What do you do on a stove?
You cook.
Sign cook.
Cook.
You know why that's the sign for cook?
Because it's making like flapjacks.
Because it's turning something over.
Yeah.
Right? So this is cook. So is the stove that you use a box?
Yeah.
And then you cook there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a stove. Does it have an oven?
It has the potential to have an oven. You made a box.
That's true. Does yours have an oven?
Yes.
How would you sign the oven? Okay. You don't need to build the round. This is a measurement, and I don't know what you're building. Is this the thickness of the gap between the door and the oven?
I was probably doing the trim or something.
Right. Okay. I mean, this is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So there's
That.
do we have to build a
No, if you pull it open with a familiar, then you know it has a door.
If you pull it,
Especially
then you know
especially if you put something in.
And if you don't put anything in, you still have a door.
Yeah.
And if the door is under a stovetop, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's the box with cooking. We cook. We didn't say it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 flat. It just says we cook on this surface, and it has an oven. So we know that we've constructed a range.
How would you show the difference between like an electric range and a gas range, if you wanted to?
Tells the person that you're going to be building a piece of vocabulary. So, box, cook, there, electric.
Okay.
Box, cook, there, gas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So adjectives come after the thing we're talking about. So once you have the basic concept of the stove features that we need in order to be able to efficiently get to cooking this,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And one of the things that happens with people who go to school is they learn about this construction concept, but nobody ever tells them how to start choosing the pieces that they need. So they end up with super elaborate details, and we will help you reduce that.
So,
all right.
Okay.
Line drawings. Can you sign the refrigerator?
Maybe.
Okay. So is your refrigerator a full-size room refrigerator? That's a freezer. Okay, good. And do you normally interact with your refrigerator with two hands?
No.
All right, so when you're in Big World, yeah, when you're in Big World, you're going to use the thing you're talking about exactly the way you use it in Big World. Remember, we're trying to activate mirror neurons. If a deaf person sees this box or sees this box, that cold, right? Then we've got our refrigerator. And we've got it because you felt the cold. You felt the size. We have a little apartment refrigerator, right? Or we have a big double door refrigerator with ice, right? So you can do all kinds of things to make your refrigerator more refrigerator by adding adjectives. And your adjectives are going to be added by interacting with the unit you're constructing in Big World. Make sense? Okay.
So if you did like refrigerator.
Yes, and that means that you open the door to get to the water access for the refrigerator.
Which is actually not true. It's in the door.
Do you want to open the door to get to the water access, or do you want the water access to be in the door?
It's in the door.
Okay, so don't build it like that. Don't build it like that. That's trying to figure out how to make me see how it's constructed. I don't need to see how it's constructed. I only have to share your experience of getting water. Okay, so build your refrigerator. Okay. And you open your door with your left hand?
Well, honestly, downstairs, I'm just flipping things. It's actually right.
Yeah. So you open it with your right hand. And then where's the water?
It's right here.
Yes. And you would probably do this. And then put. And then water. And that's all you need. You can do that if you want to, but you don't need to. You can just say water. Right? Because the water doesn't have to have a verb. We know that water's coming in. There's a thing called reasonable relationship. And you get to a certain point where continuing to add stuff is not really necessary. Okay? Okay. Now there's two more worlds. Okay? There's micro world and there's macro world.
Oh, micro. Got it.
Right? So if I'm looking at a cell, I think that's micro.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at a cell, or if I'm taking the eye apart.
Yeah, like a microscope.
If I'm doing surgery, right?
Yeah.
So that would be micro. And we would just basically pull it out and we turn it into this big world thing. Right? And then the macro world is being able to talk about the universe and light years in distance. And Mars is there, and the thing went and landed. And everything, we're in small world, but we're actually in some other place. Right? Okay.
Yeah, this reminds me, I do a lot of art, a lot of drawing, and this is reminding me of like minimalist line drawings.
Yes, it is. It is. And I have not taken a class in minimalist line drawings, but if you have good experience with that, then you will be able to recruit that and to learn. Stop.
No, I have
recruit that in your training.
Yeah, that's definitely an area that I'm not that strong with it with signing, but that's because no one's ever talked like this stuff, and I've gone through these programs.
I know, nobody teaches this.
They just teach vocabulary and word order.
Right, and I don't teach vocabulary. This is what I teach. What I teach is, this is how we construct a concept. Let's try another concept, we construct it, and then we tear it up, and we figure out why it's there.
Is anyone else teaching it like this?
Nobody.
I've never seen any. I mean, I've taken classes on both coasts, for years and years, and I've never seen anyone teach like this. But it makes sense. I've always thought of it as a as conveying a video from one person to another, that it's like being in a dream.
It's true. It is true. The problem is that includes a lot of premise, right?
Mm-hmm.
There has to be an understanding of what big world does, and how to do it, and there has to be an understanding of what small world is and how to do that, or you can't get the video experience.
No, because if you can't,
relies on mirror neurons.
If you can't evoke the feeling of what the person's experience makes sense out of, you can't have them mirror the feeling.
Exactly, right? So if you say it's like a movie, everybody who's learning sign language says it's like a movie. Everybody who comes into sign language at some point sees a deaf person who is in full caricaturization mode. They're talking about their sister way back when they were little and they were having an argument. Or they're talking about their mother when they gave them a Valentine's Day card. And they become their mother. And you can see them take on this person's facial expressions, body shape. You know, this is a big, giant, fat guy talking about his skinny mom, and you literally see him get skinny.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those things are the things, those are why hearing people want to learn sign language. They want to be able to do that. And you can't do that if you don't understand this.
Yeah, you can't be a master in art unless you can actually sketch.
Well,
okay, maybe not. You got Jackson Pollock. But still.
You know, I mean, the concept is that what they're teaching, in my opinion, is not language. What they're teaching is English.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're teaching is all they know how to teach. So, like, I've been working on a dictionary for 20 years. Someday maybe I'll get it together, and someday I'll die, and somebody else will get it together and put it out there for me. Or, you know, you wait for deaf people to do it, and they just don't do it.
Maybe tomorrow.
But maybe.
Mañana.
So anyway, all right. So I have to get ready to go to work.
Yeah, I got a patient about 5.
Yeah, you got a patient like 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Very professional. My Validef shirt here.
Yeah. Well, Validef it's professional.
Oh yeah. No, I don't. Yeah, this actually runs relatively close to what I thought I was seeing. I just didn't really come up with it as a theory, other than more like it's identifying patterns that make sense to me.
All right. So do you want to do this again?
Definitely.